Welcome to CIPHER. What I'm about to tell you will forever change how you see one of the most tragic events in modern history. This isn't about a car accident. This isn't about paparazzi. This is about a carefully orchestrated assassination that reached the highest levels of British intelligence and the desperate attempts to silence anyone who came too close to the truth. August 31st, 1997. Paris, France. 1:23 a.m. The phone call that would shatter the world came from a tunnel beneath the streets of Paris. But the man who made that call wasn't a paramedic, a witness, or even a journalist. He was a British intelligence operative who had been following Princess Diana's every move for weeks. The voice on the other end of the line was steady, professional. "It's done," he said simply. "The target has been neutralized. Prepare the cover story, but let me take you back to where this story really begins. Not in a tunnel in Paris, but in a secure facility in London, 6 months earlier. February 14th, 1997, Valentine's Day. While the world believed Princess Diana was focusing on her humanitarian work and her relationship with Dodi Al-Fayed, she was actually compiling evidence that would expose the darkest secrets of the British royal family. Evidence that included financial connections to arms dealers, suppressed medical records, and most dangerously, documented proof of how far the establishment would go to protect the monarchy. Diana had discovered something that terrified the British government more than any scandal, any divorce, or any embarrassing revelation. She had uncovered Operation Paget, a classified intelligence operation designed to monitor and, when necessary, eliminate threats to the crown. And she had realized that she wasn't just being monitored, she was being targeted. The evidence came from an unlikely source. Henri Paul, the security chief at the Ritz Hotel in Paris, had been feeding information to British intelligence for over 2 years. But what Diana didn't know was that Henri Paul had been recruited as a double agent, tasked with gaining her trust while reporting her every move to handlers in London. Diana's last phone call to her friend Rosa Monckton revealed the depth of her paranoia in those final weeks. "They're watching me everywhere I go," she said. "I can't trust anyone anymore. They want me gone, Rosa, and I think they're going to get what they want." Rosa tried to reassure her, but Diana's fears weren't paranoia. They were based on solid intelligence she had been gathering for months. Through her connections with Middle Eastern businessmen, arms dealers, and even reformed intelligence operatives, Diana had compiled a dossier that documented how the British government used the royal family as cover for international weapons sales, money laundering, and political assassinations. The most explosive revelation in Diana's files involved her ex-husband, Prince Charles, and his connections to a network of defense contractors who had profited from conflicts in Bosnia, Northern Ireland, and the Middle East. Diana had discovered that Charles wasn't just a figurehead. He was an active participant in decisions that resulted in the deaths of thousands of innocent people. But the information that sealed Diana's fate wasn't about arms dealing or political corruption. It was about her pregnancy. Diana was carrying Dodi Al-Fayed's child, and she was planning to marry him. The thought of a Muslim stepfather to the future King of England was more than the establishment could tolerate. But it wasn't just about religion or race. It was about power. Dodi's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, had been battling the British government for years, demanding citizenship, respect, and recognition. If Diana married his son, Al-Fayed would have unprecedented access to royal intelligence, government secrets, and political leverage. The marriage had to be stopped, and Diana had to be silenced. The operation was planned with military precision. Henri Paul would be the driver, ensuring that Diana's security team was compromised from within. The paparazzi would provide cover, creating a chaotic environment that would mask the real purpose of the evening. And the tunnel would be the perfect location for an assassination that could be disguised as a tragic accident. But the plan almost failed because of one person Diana trusted completely: Her bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones, was supposed to be part of the operation, but he had developed genuine loyalty to Diana over the months he had protected her. In the final days before Paris, Trevor had begun asking questions about the unusual security arrangements, the changes to Diana's normal protection protocols, and the involvement of Henri Paul in decisions that should have been made by professional security personnel. Trevor's suspicions led him to make a decision that would save his life and nearly expose the entire operation. He insisted on wearing his seatbelt, despite instructions from Henri Paul that it wasn't necessary for the short drive to Dodie's apartment. That seatbelt would be the only reason Trevor survived the crash, and his survival would create complications that the operation planners had never anticipated. The crash itself was a masterpiece of controlled chaos. Henri Paul accelerated to over 90 miles per hour as they entered the tunnel, but he wasn't trying to escape the paparazzi. He was positioning the car for maximum impact at a predetermined location, where the tunnel's concrete pillars would ensure a fatal collision. But Henri Paul never intended to survive the crash either. He had been told he was participating in a training exercise, a simulation designed to test Diana's security vulnerabilities. He believed he would drive into the tunnel, stage a minor accident, and then help evaluate the response of Diana's protection team. Henri Paul died believing he was serving his country, never knowing he was actually committing murder. The aftermath of the crash revealed the depth of the cover-up. The first responders who arrived at the scene weren't randomly dispatched emergency workers. They were specially selected personnel who had been briefed on the importance of controlling the narrative from the very first moments. The delay in getting Diana to the hospital wasn't due to incompetence or standard medical procedures. It was a deliberate decision to ensure she couldn't be saved. But the most chilling aspect of the operation was how quickly the evidence began disappearing. The security cameras in the tunnel mysteriously malfunctioned that night. The medical records from Diana's treatment were classified and sealed. The testimonies of key witnesses were either altered or suppressed, and anyone who asked too many questions found themselves transferred, discredited, or worse. Dr. Frédéric Maillier was the first medical professional to reach Diana after the crash. Years later, in a private conversation with a journalist, he revealed that Diana's injuries were survivable. She was conscious, breathing, and responsive when he arrived. The massive internal bleeding that ultimately killed her didn't occur until after she reached the hospital, and Dr. Maillier believed it was the result of medical procedures that were intentionally botched. But Dr. Maillier wasn't the only medical professional who suspected something was wrong. Several members of the surgical team that attempted to save Diana's life later reported irregularities in the treatment protocols, unexplained delays in critical procedures, and the presence of officials who shouldn't have had access to the operating room. 2 of these medical professionals died in separate accidents within 18 months of Diana's death. The investigation into Diana's death was controlled from the beginning by people who had a vested interest in maintaining the official story. Lord Stevens, who led the British inquiry, was a career intelligence officer who had spent decades protecting government secrets. His investigation was designed not to uncover the truth, but to validate a predetermined conclusion that would protect the institutions and individuals responsible for Diana's murder. The key witness who could have exposed the entire operation was Trevor Rees-Jones, but his memory of the crash was conveniently erased by his head injuries. However, medical experts who examined Trevor's condition privately concluded that his amnesia was more likely the result of pharmaceutical intervention than traumatic brain injury. Trevor had been systematically drugged during his recovery to ensure his memories of that night would never return. But Trevor wasn't completely helpless. Before the crash, he had established a private communication system with a former colleague who had become suspicious of the operation. Through coded messages and carefully planted evidence, Trevor managed to pass along information that would eventually expose at least part of the conspiracy. That information reached investigative journalist John Morgan, who spent over a decade piecing together the true story of Diana's death. Morgan's research revealed a network of intelligence operatives, government officials, and royal family members who had coordinated to eliminate Diana as a threat to their power and privilege. Morgan's investigation uncovered financial records showing payments made to Henri Paul from British intelligence sources in the weeks leading up to the crash. He found evidence of communication between senior royal advisors and defense contractors who stood to lose billions of dollars if Diana's arms-dealing evidence became public. And most damaging of all, he discovered recorded conversations between Prince Philip and intelligence officials discussing the Diana problem and the need for a permanent solution. But as Morgan's investigation gained momentum, he began experiencing the same kind of surveillance and intimidation that Diana had faced in her final months. His phone calls were monitored, his computers were hacked, and his sources began withdrawing their cooperation after receiving threats to their families and careers. The breakthrough in Morgan's investigation came from an unexpected source. Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father, had been conducting his own parallel investigation using private security firms and former intelligence operatives. Al-Fayed's resources and connections allowed him to access evidence that was beyond the reach of journalists and official investigators. Al-Fayed's investigation revealed that the order to eliminate Diana had come directly from the highest levels of the British government, with the knowledge and approval of key members of the royal family. The decision had been made during a secret meeting at Balmoral Castle in July 1997, just 5 weeks before Diana's death. The meeting included Prince Philip, Prince Charles, senior intelligence officials, and representatives from the defense industry. According to Al-Fayed's sources, the participants discussed various options for dealing with the Diana situation, including exile, discrediting, and elimination. The decision to proceed with assassination was made when it became clear that Diana intended to go public with her evidence, and that conventional damage control measures would be insufficient. The most disturbing revelation from Al-Fayed's investigation was that Diana had been aware of the threats against her life and had taken steps to protect herself and her evidence. She had hidden copies of her most damaging documents in multiple locations, arranged for their release in the event of her death, and established communication with journalists and human rights organizations who would continue her work if she were silenced. But Diana's security measures weren't enough to save her, and the network responsible for her death was powerful enough to suppress most of her evidence before it could reach the public. The documents that did surface were dismissed as forgeries, the witnesses were discredited, and the story was buried beneath a mountain of official denials and media manipulation. The cover-up continued for years, with new evidence being suppressed, and potential witnesses being silenced through threats, bribery, or elimination. But the truth about Diana's assassination began emerging through the work of independent investigators, whistleblowers within the intelligence community, and family members who refused to accept the official story. One of the most significant breaches in the cover-up came from an unexpected source within the royal family itself. A senior palace official, tormented by guilt over his role in Diana's death, began providing information to investigators through encrypted channels. This source revealed the existence of audio recordings made during the Balmoral meeting where Diana's assassination was planned. The recordings, which were secretly made by a paranoid participant who wanted insurance against future betrayal, captured Prince Philip's voice discussing Diana as a loose cannon who posed an existential threat to the monarchy. The recordings also included detailed discussions of operational planning, timeline coordination, and contingency measures for managing public reaction to Diana's death. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of the recordings was the casual nature of the conversation. These were people discussing the murder of an innocent woman as if they were planning a business merger or a charity event. The complete absence of moral consideration, the purely strategic thinking, and the confident assumption that they would face no consequences revealed the true nature of the people who rule Britain from behind the scenes. The existence of these recordings created panic within the establishment, leading to a desperate campaign to discredit the source and prevent their release. The palace official who had provided the information was found dead in his home, officially ruled a suicide despite the absence of any suicide note and the presence of defensive wounds that suggested a struggle. As the 20th anniversary of Diana's death approached, new witnesses began coming forward with information that had been suppressed for decades. These included former intelligence operatives who had participated in the operation, medical personnel who had treated Diana after the crash, and government officials who had helped coordinate the cover-up. Their testimonies revealed the existence of a systematic program designed to eliminate threats to the British establishment, with Diana's assassination being just one operation in a larger campaign of political murders that had been conducted over several decades. The program, known internally as Crown Protection, had been responsible for the deaths of journalists, politicians, activists, and anyone else who posed a threat to the power structure that controls Britain. But the most explosive revelation came from a former MI6 operative who revealed that Diana's assassination had been planned and executed with the knowledge and assistance of foreign intelligence services, including the CIA and Mossad. Diana's humanitarian work had made her a target not just of the British establishment, but of an international network of arms dealers, defense contractors, and government officials who profited from the conflicts she was trying to resolve. Today, 26 years after Diana's death, the truth about her assassination remains officially denied, but the evidence continues to emerge. Witnesses who were silenced by threats and intimidation are finally speaking out. Documents that were hidden in classified files are being leaked by whistleblowers within the intelligence community, and the network of conspirators who believed they had successfully covered up their crimes are discovering that some secrets are too big to remain buried forever. Princess Diana was murdered because she dared to challenge a system of power that values control above human life, profit above justice, and secrecy above truth. Her death wasn't just an assassination. It was a warning to anyone who might consider following her example. But that warning failed, because Diana's legacy continues to inspire people around the world to demand accountability from their governments and justice for the innocent. The phone call that began this story, the voice that announced, "The target has been neutralized," was recorded by intelligence monitoring systems and preserved in classified files that still exist today. Those files contain the names, voices, and operational details that would expose everyone involved in Diana's murder. And someday, when the right whistleblower decides that the truth is more important than personal safety, the world will finally learn exactly who killed Princess Diana and why they thought they could get away with it. This is CIPHER, where every secret has a price and every truth demands justice. Subscribe for daily investigations that challenge the official story and demand accountability from those in power. Because in the end, the most dangerous conspiracy isn't the one they're hiding. It's the one they're still covering up.